What's good, YouTube? It's me, your boy Squiddy, back again with another video. As you all know, the OCG recently got their second ban list that was supposed to neuter the Tearlaments deck, basically banning Kit Kalos, bringing Rhinoheart down to 1, Sheeran to 1, and before that, they already had Havness to 2, Planet to 1, the Ishizu monsters Keldo and Agito to 1, but somehow the deck is still the best deck in the OCG? This makes absolutely no sense. So let's just talk about it really quick here. Looking at this pie chart, courtesy of Road of the King, we can see that Tearlaments appears to be taking the metagame by a large chunk, up to 21.3% of the tournaments that have been happening throughout the past month. It's kind of crazy to imagine that this deck can still be even playable after all of these hits. We're supposed to just bring the deck down into the ground, but somehow they still keep coming back. Trailing behind, we do have the Sprite Tri-Brigade deck that puts up some pretty threatening boards in the form of having Revolt plus the double Dragon Lords, and then obviously having the Sprite plays, so the disruptions in the form of Smashers or double cross on top of like an elf or recursion plays. But I wanted to specifically talk about the Tearlaments and see how they are still a dominant force. So let's dive into some of the deck recipes that have been doing well in the OCG. This is a second place from a Chinese tournament that actually had 250 players. You can see that they are still maxing out on all the copies of the cards that they are able to play. We are also playing Castor, Ephemerer, and Unicorn, both of which have been limited by the new ban list as well. They weren't playing around. The OCG literally limited all the best deck cards that were in the metagame. They still have 3 copies of Fairy Tale Snow, which I find is absolutely ridiculous. So we're obviously going to stick that in there for added disruption. And then another new addition that you will see is the addition of King of the Swamp. This was a card that was play tested by both TCG and OCG players alike throughout the past couple of formats when Tearlaments were a lot stronger, especially in the OCG. But now this seems to be like an auto inclusion, given that it does substitute itself for the Kit Kalos. So that is a big deal, being able to make Ru Kalos. Otherwise, there's no other way to make it, given that Kit Kalos is banned. And the other thing is that you are able to discard this for a copy of Polymerization for a extender, or the ability to make a Guardian Chimera that cannot be targeted. And targeting is obviously a big deal right now in the OCG, given that there are a lot of cards that target in the form of double Dragon Lords, the Sprite, the Tri-Brigade cards, a lot of them do target. So this card does allow you to bypass cards like Imperm, Veiler as well, to blow up some cards while drawing cards in the process and potentially triggering off any tier names that you happen to fuse with. The other card that you can make is Grapha, Dragon Overlord of the Dark World, which requires Grapha plus Dark Monster. So we can auto make that with King of the Swamp and any Tearlaments name, and this allows you to basically become an Omni Negate, in that the quick effect allows you to change any normal spell or trap card or monster effect to your opponent discards 1 card. So if your opponent activates like a Pot of Desires, you make the effect become you discard 1 card instead, which allows you to trigger off your Tearlaments name on their turn and continue to play. The one thing that you will note is that Kelbeck is still at 3 in their format. I don't know why they hit Agito to 1 instead of Kelbeck, when Kelbeck is obviously the most broken one because it is another hand trap that can be disruption. That being said, they are also playing some Shadal packages. You will see some Shadal cards being sided as well. We are going to max out on the cards that we can, Tearlaments, Kashtira, and then Scream, in order to see these cards hit the graveyard more consistently, so we are able to fuse and make big plays. Turns out that like putting grave effects as free pluses that you can mill is still just super broken in the game, and I don't know what they can possibly do to bring this deck actually to its demise. You would probably have to start banning some names, if anything. They are still playing like Gravekeeper's Trap. You're seeing Meta Noise and then more copies of Celia, given that there are not a lot of players. Not all the players are playing Tearlaments, so why not just max out on these copies? And then in the side deck, Dark Ruler, just to hit the Tri-Brigade decks, because they do put up like threatening boards with like 4 or 5 disruptions. So having a Dark Ruler being a blanket wipe is very, very good against that. We are also seeing Triple Tactic Tasking being a lethal force, allowing you to side deck 1 copy of cards like Evenly Matched, so we can actually search that and then follow up to board wipe that are board. Skill Drain is another card that's also good against a lot of decks in the metagame, especially the Tri-Brigade decks, given that it shuts down their entire deck. Same with Nibiru being able to hit that deck. And the other thing to take a look at is the 4th place Kashtira Deer deck that was top 4 in that same tournament. Similar deck, but this guy decided to keep it down to 40, so we are consistent. We are also playing 1 copy of Foolish Burial Goods to be able to Foolish Burial any of these traps or the spells to search a monster, a trap, vice versa. It's a little interesting they're not actually playing the regular Foolish Burial, because I thought that would be a nice auto-inclusion, given that you can trigger like the names like Sheeran, that it's at 1. But it turns out maybe it's just not needed, because this deck still has enough gas power that you don't really need a card like that that's also shut down by Abyss Dweller. So we're also seeing multiple copies of Castor Birth. This is another card that you can add off of Unicorn, allowing you to special summon back your Fenrir or Unicorn, or the Tearlaments Castor, which is also a Castor card. And then when this card is special summoned, you can you can mill 3 cards. So it allows you to make extender plays. Also go into Draco Sack and make some tokens, which can then be used to make Sprite Sprint using a plethora of different plays. Yeah, it's really, really interesting to see what they're doing here, and that this deck is still really, really powerful. I just noticed that Terraforming, obviously, being a second copy of either Prime Planet Peresos or Perler Rhino, allows you to have maximum consistency. And then in the side deck, like I mentioned before, they are playing some Shaddoll cards, so we're seeing like Shaddoll Fusion. Dark Ruler seems to be a really popular side deck card, as well as Droll Knockbird, given that it can shut down some of the decks that add a bunch of cards to hand throughout their combo. So I would like to say that the Shaddoll package might be something you guys want to pick up, because this might be something that the TCG deck will need as well. I imagine the TCG ban list, the next one, will likely hit this deck just as hard. Probably, very likely banning Kikalos at the very least. But from what we're seeing in the OCG, this deck is still playable, even with 3 Maxi in the format that shuts down this deck quite hard. So we're probably going to see this deck be possible Nationals contender, even in the TCG metagame. So if you guys haven't picked up some of these cards, definitely go ahead and do that already. I know Prime Planet Rhino is only $30 now, so that might be a card that you can keep your eye on. But we're probably going to see this card go limited, so maybe it's not something you want to pick up immediately, because if it does get limited, it'll probably go down to like $10 or so. But cards that are cheaper, that are semi-forgotten, cards like Shaddoll Fusion, maybe a couple of skill drains, Dark Ruler as well. These cards are cards that you guys should be picking up. And Droll Knockbird, this just got reprinted. So guys, please pick these cards up while they're cheap. The minute that the ban list hits and these cards start getting sided, they will shoot up in price again. Like maybe like $10, $15 for cards like Shaddoll Fusion or Droll Knockbird when they don't get reprinted for a bit, and like, you know, the cards are scarce. Everyone's looking for them like a year later. So definitely pick up these cards if you don't have them already. And the other thing to note is that, you know, like, these Shizu cards are very cheap right now, so pick these guys up if you can. You know, these cards are a couple of dollars each. It doesn't matter if they do get hit; like, they're not gonna be cheaper than that, really. The only thing that we want to prepare ourselves for is if these cards don't get hit, then all of a sudden they skyrocket, because, like, you know, the sets aren't being printed anymore. So these are cards that you guys should pick up. If anything, they're good trade bait, even if you're not going to play the deck. It's good trade bait. It's good penny stock investment that you can actually chip off for later and make like 100% or more return on your investment, and then trade it for cards that you actually do want to play. So just looking at the OCG is a great way to kind of get acquainted with cards that might be playable in the TCG formats. As long as they, you know, hit the similar cards, which they usually do. King of the Swamp is another one that I think just got reprinted. So pick these guys up. They were like $15 each for the rares and the commons before the reprints happened. So these are cards that you guys could definitely take a look at on TCG Player, see if you can stock up on them. It's a great way to get another return on your investment in this game, so you can reinvest into decks and cards that you might want to play in the upcoming metagame. So yeah, that's really about it. All I wanted to show you guys, like, the Tearlaments, they are obviously like really, really good. I think the TCG is going to have to do something drastic and hit them way more than what the OCG already has across the span of 2 ban lists in order to even make this deck have a chance at dying out of the format. So we'll see what happens in the next format. But if you guys like this video, rate, comment, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on how they could hit Tearlaments so it's not playable at all. Because I thought Kikalos would be the death of them, but I guess not. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.